fear, anxiety, happiness, sorrow. There are so many emotions that we feel in our day-to-day lives. But have you ever thought, why do we feel so many emotions? Actually, these emotions are nothing much but chemical reactions that happen within our bodies, and they give rise to various hormones that make us feel the way we do. So many such mysteries and phenomena occurring within our bodies and around us can be explained through the subject of chemistry. But understanding chemistry would not be possible without understanding the most basic unit of this science, that is the atom. And in this discussion we would be learning about the atom, its structure, its fundamental particles like the neutron, proton, electron, the atomic mass, the mass number, and the atomic weight. But before we go any further in this discussion, let us define the subject chemistry here. Formally speaking, chemistry can be understood as a science concerned with the composition, structure and properties of matter, as well as the changes that matter undergoes during the chemical reactions. In other words, we can call it a physical science for the studies of various atoms, molecules, crystals and other aggregates of matter, whether in isolation or combination, which incorporates the concepts of energy and entropy in relation to the spontaneity of chemical processes. So coming back to the atom, everything that we see, hear, feel or touch is composed of atoms. Yet an individual atom is so small that it takes millions of them to form the fingernails or to form the sound that we hear when a pin drops. So an atom can be understood as the most basic building block of matter and the smallest unit of an element that retains the properties of that element. So what exactly do we mean by matter? Actually, matter is anything that has both mass and volume, or anything that occupies space. For example, a car. A car would be said to be made up of matter as it occupies space and has mass. Let us understand one more term here, that is element. When a material is formed from only one type of atom, then it is called as an element, whereas if it is formed from a combination of more than one kind of atom, then it is called a compound. We can have a look here at a few familiar materials to understand the difference between element and compound. So as we can see here, water is made up of two types of atoms, the hydrogen atom and the oxygen atom. And as it is made up of more than one kind of atom, we can label it as a compound. Let us take another example of the common salt. So the common salt is made up of sodium and chlorine. So again it is made up of a combination of two kind of atoms, and thus we label it as a compound. One more example that we can talk of is diamond. Diamond is made up of carbon atoms, and so we label it as an element. And as we know, oxygen is made up of oxygen atoms, and thus we can label it as an element. So we can say all matter is made up of elements which are fundamental substances which cannot be broken down by chemical means. There are 92 such elements that occur naturally. The elements hydrogen, carbon, oxygen, nitrogen are the elements that make up the living organisms. Some other elements that can be found in the living organisms are magnesium, phosphorus, calcium, potassium or sodium. Although we will find that atoms are divisible into smaller particles, still it is the smallest piece of matter because we cannot divide it any further without losing the chemical properties of the matter. So for example, we may divide graphite from ashes in a barbecue into smaller and smaller pieces until eventually we have only single carbon atoms. But these atoms still have all the properties of the carbon and are distinct from other types of atoms. But if we still further break these atoms apart, we will lose the chemical properties of carbon, and the pieces which we will get would be indistinguishable from the particles that we would get by smashing any other material. So, thus we can understand that though atoms are divisible into smaller particles, still they are the smallest piece of matter. Let me add here that understanding the atom can be one of the most powerful tools in the understanding of chemistry. But the concept of atom is a difficult one to understand. Why so? Simply because we are unable to resolve the world into individual atoms in our daily lives. So, unless we work in a specialized laboratory, we will never be able to see or touch or feel individual atoms. So, understanding the structure of an atom can be very difficult because there are no simple experiments that can be performed to make it clear what atoms look like or how they behave. So, if we want to understand the structure of an atom, we can think of an atom like a tiny solar system. In the center of the atom is the nucleus, which is a cluster of protons and neutrons. The protons have a positive electrical charge and the neutrons are electrically neutral. The nucleus makes up of almost all of the atomic mass or weight, and around this nucleus we have in orbitals we have the negatively charged electrons. So, nucleus can be defined as the core of the atom, which is made up of protons and neutrons. The nucleus accounts for nearly all of the mass of the atom, but only a tiny fraction of its volume. So, an atom consists of three main parts: the protons, the neutrons and the electrons. These parts are known as the subatomic particles or the fundamental particles. So, an atom would always have the same number of protons having the positive charge and the same number of electrons having the negative charge to make itself electrically neutral. So, here let us see the proper definitions of these subatomic particles one by one. Proton was the first subatomic particle to be discovered in the year 1886 by E. Goldstein and can be defined as a subatomic particle which has 1 unit mass and 1 unit positive charge. The second subatomic particle, that is the electron, can be defined as a subatomic particle which bears charge minus 1.60 into 10 raised to the power minus 19 coulomb and has mass 9.1 into 10 raised to the power minus 28 grams. In other words, an electron can be defined as a particle bearing 1 unit negative charge and mass 1 by 1835th of a hydrogen atom. The knowledge about the electron was derived by J.J. Thomson in the year 1896. In the year 1932, Sir James Chadwick discovered the third subatomic particle, that is the neutron, and it was defined as a subatomic particle which has a mass almost equal to that of a proton and has no charge. Now, let us summarize these three basic particles or the fundamental particles of an atom. So, protons and neutrons are responsible for most of the atomic mass. Let us take an example here of an 150 kg man. So, in a 150 kg man, 149 pounds and 15 ounce would be due to the protons and the neutrons respectively, while only 1 ounce would be due to the electrons. So, it is the number of protons that determines the atomic number. For example, hydrogen has an atomic number of 1. So, though the number of protons in an element is constant, like hydrogen is 1 or uranium is 92, but the neutron number may vary and so would the mass number. So, here let us understand few important terms before we move any further in the discussion. These terms are the atomic number, mass number and the atomic mass. Atomic number of an element is equal to the number of protons in the nucleus of the atom of that element. Nowadays, the atomic number is also referred to as the proton number. Now, what is the mass number? The total number of protons and neutrons present in the nucleus of an atom is referred to as the mass number. In situations where we do not need to differentiate between the protons and the neutrons, we call these particles as nucleons. So, let us take an example of sodium here. Sodium has 11 protons and 12 neutrons. So, the mass number would be the total number of protons plus the total number of neutrons, which would be equal to 23. So, in other words, we can say that the mass number is the total number of particles present within the nucleus. The mass number and the atomic number would be written on the top and the bottom of the left side of the chemical symbol of any element. So, here we can take the example of sodium again. The chemical symbol for sodium is Na, and 23, that is the mass number, would be written on the top left of sodium, and 11, that is the atomic number, would be written on the left bottom of sodium. Obviously, the mass number of an atom would be a whole number, and since electrons have practically no mass, the entire atomic mass is due to the protons and the neutrons, each of which has a mass which is almost exactly 1 unit. So, the mass number of an atom can be obtained by rounding off the experimental value of the atomic mass to the nearest whole number. So, for example, the atomic mass of sodium and fluorine obtained by experiment is 22.9898 and 26.9815 atomic mass unit. So, their mass numbers would be 23 for sodium and 27 for fluorine if we round off these experimental values in case of sodium and fluorine. So, by knowing the atomic number and the mass number of an atom, we can tell the number of protons and the number of neutrons present inside the nucleus. So, let us see how. By definition, we saw that the atomic number Z would be equal to the number of protons and the mass number A would be equal to the sum of the number of protons and the number of neutrons. So, if we want to find out the number of neutrons, we can do it by this expression, that is N is equal to A minus Z. So, we get the total number of neutrons present within the nucleus. Here let us understand one more term, that is the atomic mass. The atomic mass may be considered as the total mass of protons, neutrons and electrons in a single atom. Now, since the atomic number is the number of protons in an atom and atomic mass is the mass of protons, neutrons and electrons in an atom, it seems obvious that increasing the number of protons would increase the atomic mass. However, if you look at the atomic masses in a periodic table, you will see that cobalt atomic number of 27 is more massive than nickel having an atomic number of 28. Also, uranium having an atomic number of 92 is more massive than neptunium having an atomic number of 93. And why is it so? This is because many atoms do not have the same number of neutrons as they have the number of protons. So, they do not have the equal number of neutrons and protons within the nucleus. So, we can understand that increasing the atomic number does not always equate to increasing the mass, or in other words we can say that several isotopes of an element may exist. Now, what do we mean by isotope? By definition, the atoms of an element which have the same number of protons and different number of neutrons are called isotopes. So, if a sizable portion of an element of lower atomic number exists in the form of heavy isotopes, then the mass of that element may be heavier than that of the next element. So, if there were no isotopes and all elements had an equal number of protons and neutrons, then the atomic mass would be approximately twice the atomic number. Because protons and neutrons do not exactly have the same mass, and the mass of electrons is so small that it is negligible. So thus the atoms of each chemical element have a different nucleus. Let us take the example of hydrogen, which has 1 proton and no neutrons, or the atom of nitrogen that has 7 protons and 7 neutrons. So heavy elements have a large number of protons and neutrons. So for example, the most common isotope of uranium, that is uranium 238, has 92 protons and 146 neutrons in its nucleus. Another example is that of oxygen with atomic number of 8, and it can have 8, 9 or 10 neutrons in its nucleus. Here let me tell you about the periodic table. The periodic table is a collection of information about every element in the universe. It is the tabular arrangement of the chemical element according to the atomic number as based on the periodic law. So it gives information about the chemical symbol of each element, the atomic weight, mass, also the name and the charge. The layout of the table has been refined and extended over the years as new elements have been discovered and new theoretical models have been developed to explain the chemical behavior. Different periodic tables even list different numbers for the atomic masses. Now let us come back to the atom and understand how the electrons are organized around the nucleus. All atoms would like to attain electron configuration like that of noble gases, that is, they would love to have completed outer shells. This makes the element completely inert. Helium is an example of noble gas or inert gas, and it is not present in the organisms because it is not chemically reactive. So atoms can form stable electron configurations like noble gases by either losing electrons, by gaining electrons or by sharing electrons. So for a stable configuration, each atom must fill its outermost energy level. In the case of noble gases, that means 8 electrons in the last shell have to be filled up, with an exception of helium which has only 2 electrons. So atoms that have 1, 2 or 3 electrons in their outer levels will tend to lose them in interactions with atoms that have 5, 6 or 7 electrons in their outermost level. Or in putting it the other way, atoms that have 5, 6 or 7 electrons in their outer levels will tend to gain electrons from atoms with 1, 2 or 3 electrons in their outer levels. So atoms that have 4 electrons in the outermost energy level will neither tend to totally lose nor totally gain electrons during the interactions. The mass of an atom is primarily due to the mass of the nucleus, and the mass of a single electron is almost 2000 times less than the mass of a single proton or a single neutron. However, the nucleus occupies less than 1% of the total volume of the atom. So, most of the atom is actually empty space. Let us imagine that atom was the size of the classroom, then the nucleus would be the size of a grain of sand in the entire class. Here let me ask you a question. Have you ever wondered what holds an atom together? Let us try to answer this one. Actually, the atom is held together by two fundamental forces that exist in the universe. First is the electromagnetic force and second is the strong nuclear force. The strong electromagnetic force is the one that we encounter in our everyday experiences. For example, the attraction between the north pole and the south pole of a bar magnet is due to the electromagnetic force. So, electrical charges behave similarly due to the same force, that is, the like charges repel and unlike charges attract. So, the electromagnetic force is responsible for keeping the electrons attached to the nucleus in an atom. Since the nucleus is made up of protons and neutrons, it is positively charged because protons have a positive charge and neutrons are electrically neutral, while the surrounding electrons are negatively charged. So, we have all heard the phrase opposites attract, and since the nucleus and electrons have opposite charges, They attract each other, and it is this attraction which binds the atoms together. So, the strong nuclear force is one that we do not encounter in our daily lives and is somewhat more abstract. A logical question is that if we cannot make tangible observations about this force, then how do we know that it exists? Actually, it comes from the thinking about the nature of the electromagnetic force. The electromagnetic force is responsible for opposite charges attracting, such as occurs between the positively charged nucleus and the negatively charged electrons in an atom. However, the electromagnetic force would then also be responsible for like charges repelling each other, and the question would then arise that how do multiple protons live together inside the nucleus? For example, helium, which we use to fill the balloons to make them lighter than air, is an element with 2 protons in the nucleus. So, only if the electromagnetic force existed, then we could argue that helium could not exist, because the protons in the nucleus would repel each other and the nucleus would fly apart. But then, however, since we know that helium does exist, we know that there must be some another force which makes the nucleus stable, and this force is the strong nuclear force. Atoms can be in the ground state, which means that all the electrons are in the lowest energy level, or they can be in the excited state. So, when atoms make transitions from excited states to the states with lower energy levels, they emit photons. Now, what are these photons? A photon is an elementary particle, the quantum of the electromagnetic field, and the basic unit of light and all other forms of electromagnetic radiation. The study of the photons is called spectroscopy. Our lasers work because of the photons emitted when excited atoms de-excite to the ground state. Here let us discuss one more thing, that is the making of molecules, or how are molecules formed. Actually, if 2 or more atoms share electrons, then they form a bond, and when atoms form bonds, they form molecules. So, let us take up an example here of water. What is the formula for water? The formula is H2O, which means that it is made up of 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. So, when atoms bond together, they can make larger building blocks of matter called the molecules. And let us see what happens when chemical reactions occur. So, chemical reactions involve interactions between the electrons of one atom and the electrons of another atom. So, atoms which have different amounts of electrons and proton have a positive or negative electrical charge and are called ions. Before concluding this discussion, let us go through some useful facts about the atoms. Atoms cannot be divided using chemicals. They do consist of parts which include protons, neutrons and electrons, but an atom is a basic chemical building block of matter. Each proton has a positive electrical charge. The charge of a proton and an electron are equal in magnitude, yet opposite in nature. So, we can say that electrons and protons are electrically attracted to each other. Each neutron is electrically neutral. In other words, neutrons do not carry any charge and are not electrically attracted to either the proton or the electron. Protons and neutrons are about the same size as each other and are much larger than the electrons. The mass of a proton is essentially the same as that of a neutron, but the mass of a proton is many times greater than the mass of an electron. The nucleus of an atom consists of protons and neutrons. The nucleus carries a positive electrical charge. Electrons move around outside the nucleus. Almost all the mass of an atom is in the nucleus. Almost all of the volume of an atom is occupied by electrons. The number of protons, also known as the atomic number, determines the element. So, varying the number of neutrons results in isotopes, and varying the number of electrons results in ions. So, isotopes and ions of an atom with a constant number of protons are all variations of a single element. The particles within an atom are bound together by powerful forces. In general, electrons are easier to add or remove from an atom rather than a proton or a neutron. Chemical reactions largely involve atoms or group of atoms, and the interactions occur between their electrons. With this, we come to a conclusion on this discussion on atoms. I hope you found it informative and interesting. Actually, this was a very basic discussion on chemistry, or should I say just the tip of the iceberg. And as you will explore this iceberg in detail or dive deeper into the vast sea of chemistry, I am sure that you will find this subject more interesting and enjoyable. Thank you.